1962 with a band I think called the Sportsmen. And Ray enjoyed what Frank was doing and went up to him and said, look, I'm a vocalist and I'd like to sing, you know, come up and sing with you on stage, which he did. And so they became friends in this way, you know, as far as, you know, Frank realized that Ray had a great vocal and vice versa. Frank liked a lot of the blues material, although Ray Collins was never really into the heavy blues stuff. He was more into the hits of the day. They had a duo, Frank Zappa and Ray Collins, and they called themselves the Sin City Boys. And what they would do is they would do, as a duo, would go and parody folk songs, popular folk songs of the day, like Peter, Paul and Mary's Puff the Magic Dragon and that type of stuff. So they actually did gigs as that. The thing about Frank and Ray, even though they had a musical affinity, the real attraction between the both of them, I think the most attraction from Frank for Ray Collins was his humor. And Frank just found that very, you know, that was very appealing to him, and I think that the humor is what brought them two together, more than the music.
Despite this early success, Zappa sought a greater public awareness. So he and Ray Collins recorded a song called How's Your Bird, based on the catchphrase of US television host Steve Allen. The sole purpose of this composition was to break free from anonymity and to be invited onto Allen's show.
He's very aware that getting on TV is a thing that will make life easy, that will lead to tours. It's Elvis on TV that launches him. It's Beatles on TV that matters. So even though he's got a very low view of television, he's continually insulting it throughout his career, he still is aware that to get enough gigs to support a band, he needs that kind of exposure. And as an illustration of his pragmatic sense, he approached a TV channel with his third stream compositions. I say third stream meaning a sort of strange kind of fusion of written music and jazz and improvised music. And they said, look, nobody wants to hear this. So he reapplied and said, look, I'll do a novelty thing for you where I'll play a bicycle.
How long have you been playing bike, Frank?
About 2 weeks.
He probably was selling insurance or something, and he thought, what's something real jerky that'll get me on the Steve Allen show? Playing bicycle. What could be sillier than that? And he did it, and here we are. That's probably how it happened.
He invented this, what's called cyclophone music or something, but it involved, the main instrument was a bicycle, and it had the sort of mouthpiece of a horn attached to the handles, and you sort of stroke the spokes with a violin bow. And he actually appeared on a nationally networked show, the Steve Allen Show, and you know, played some of this sort of bicycle music, which was accompanied by the studio orchestra sort of trying to keep up with it, and sort of various noises on a tape recorder.
The way we work this is, when the man in the control booth feels moved to add his electronic part to our work here, he will throw a little switch, which just lets some of this noise through, and then I request of the musicians that if they feel so moved, make any noise possible on your instrument. No, try and refrain from musical tones. And in fact,
They won't have any trouble with that order.
it would be possible for you
The regular way, fellas. I'm sorry.
If it would be possible for you to put some sort of objects on the strings of the piano, you'll get... That's good. I prefer you to play it that way.
All season long, Don.
All right. Now, we'll start.
Are we on?
It's interesting to see that clip, mainly from a visual point of view, because Frank's a very sort of short-haired, sort of almost preppy-looking individual, very much like he looked on the back cover of the Reuben and the Jets album. Steve Allen is actually not exactly patronising towards him, and, you know, actually gives him a fair hearing. But shortly after that, you know, everything crumbled away.
Zappa was spending a lot of time at Studio Z, and somehow, through his work with young bands and ultra-low-budget movies, he attracted the attention of the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department, who thought that something amiss may be going on. An undercover officer, posing as the organizer of a stag party, offered Frank $100 to make an audio recording of simulated sex acts. Frank, who had very little money at the time, agreed, and after handing over the tape, the studio was raided by the police.
They wound up confiscating all the equipment, all the tapes, and to this day, I don't know if Frank ever got the stuff back. I don't believe he got a lot of it back. And then he was arrested for conspiracy to produce pornographic materials, and also for sex perversion.
The raid by the Vice Squad had a profound psychological effect upon Frank, mainly because of the unfairness surrounding it. And I think that the authorities kind of insisted that he had to serve some time in jail. And it was, it was at the height of summer, and he had the works, he had sadistic guards, had to have his hair cut real short. And I certainly think that informed his attitude towards authority from then on. And it also affected his music. I think that there was a very skeptical, cynical edge added to his music, and I think it's traceable to that particular episode.
It was not long after Frank emerged from jail that he got the chance to team up again with Ray Collins, who had just joined a covers band called the Soul Giants, which featured Roy Estrada on bass, Ray Hunt on guitar, and Jimmy Carl Black on drums.
He decided that what pop music needed was a particular product. The way he puts it is that the blueprints were drawn up 2 years before he formed the Mothers of Invention. There's a certain amount of imagination in that, because he couldn't have proceeded if he hadn't happened upon a bunch of musicians playing music that he thought was really good, but even better, who would listen to him and he could form a band with. And that was the Soul Giants with Jimmy Carl Black on drums.
In about February of 1964, looking for, I moved in with my father-in-law at the time. I had a wife and 3 kids at that time. And went down to a music store, West Coast music store in Santa Ana, California, and put my name up on the board as a drummer looking for work. Well, I just barely put it up, and Roy Estrada just happened to be there, and he said, "Hey man, we're looking for a drummer, and we have a band called the Soul Giants. We're forming a band called the Soul Giants." And I said, he said, "Are you willing to audition?" I said, "Sure, man, I don't care." Of course, I'd want to audition to find out how the rest of the players are. And so I did that. I passed, obviously, I passed the test. And so I joined the Soul Giants, and we played around. And we got this gig at the Broadside in Pomona, California, the Broadside Club in California. And our singer got drafted. This was the beginning of the 1964, the beginning of the Vietnam War. But Ray Collins had been coming in and sitting in with us. Now, Ray happened to be, in my opinion, one of the best singers I've ever heard in my whole life. Well, we had that taken care of. We had a singer. And something happened to the guitar player. Him and Ray didn't get along. Ray and this singer didn't get along worth a shit. So this guy quit the band, and so we asked Ray, "Do you know a guitar player?" He said, "Yeah, I know a guy. His name is Frank Zappa. He just got out of jail." And so we said, "Well, can you call him up? Ask him if he would be willing to audition for the band." So Ray called him. He said, "Yeah, I'll audition for the band." So he came down and played for us. And he wasn't, to tell you the truth, in the beginning, Frank was not a very good lead guitar player at all. He was a good, one of the best rhythm guitar players I'd ever heard in my life. But his lead, he wasn't what you'd call a real fancy lead player at that time. So anyway, he passed the audition, and so Frank was in the band, and a month later the saxophone player quit. His name was Davy Coronado. He was going to go back to Texas. So he left, and then it was just the four of us. And that's when Frank got us all together and said, look,